While his obituary states that Edwin H. Porter was born in Kentucky in 1864 to Columbus Porter and Margaret Davis, it is impossible to tell if this year is accurate. Using census records for 1870, 1880, and 1885, it is more likely that Edwin was born a year earlier in 1863, but there are no birth records for his place of birth during the years 1862 to 1872, ostensibly because of the rural nature of that part of Kentucky. Metcalfe County was founded in 1860 and had a population of a little over 7,000. And of course, because of the Civil War. As the archivist for Metcalfe County told me, they were kind of busy back then doing other things. Metcalfe County was strongly Unionist during the Civil War, meaning they were opposed to secession and favored neutrality. Kentucky was one of the 4 slave states that remained in the Union. During the war, more than 70% of Kentucky slaves were freed or escaped to Union lines. Army recruiters from both sides enlisted volunteers, and within Kentucky, the rival factions organized militias. Confederate sympathizers called themselves the State Guard, while Unionists became the Home Guard. Later, there was even a rival Confederate government, and Confederate Kentucky became the 13th state admitted to the Confederacy. About 100,000 Kentuckians served in the Union Army, while anywhere between 25,000 and 40,000 fought for the South. Today, the population of Metcalfe County has not risen much higher than it was when it was founded in 1860 and stands at a little over 10,000 people. Edwin Porter was educated in local Kentucky schools and then continued his studies in Louisville. After graduating, he became a school teacher and concurrently studied typesetting. He must have been quite good at his work, because in 1899 in Fall River, Porter testified as an expert witness on type font and sizing at a trial concerning some illicitly labeled maple syrup. Porter worked at newspapers in Louisville, the Courier-Journal, Memphis, New Orleans, Johnstown, Pennsylvania, and in the late 1880s, the Providence Telegram in Providence, Rhode Island, all accomplished while dealing with a handicap. Either at birth or through a later trauma, it appears that Porter had sight only in one eye. In April of 1890, a new newspaper, the Fall River Tribune, was launched in Fall River, and Porter started working there as a reporter, quickly transitioning to city editor. Unfortunately, the newspaper folded later that year due to mismanagement and union issues. Porter landed on his feet, however. He was almost immediately hired as a crime reporter by the Fall River Daily Globe. By the time of the Borden murders, Porter had been in Fall River only about 2 years. Just imagine, a man from Kentucky with a southern accent walking around New England's Fall River. On October 21st, 1891, he married Winifred Alice Leonard of Fall River. Daughter Florence E. was born in October of 1892, and a second daughter, named Winifred Alice, after her mother, was born in August of 1898. Regardless of a specific year of birth, I think it's interesting that at the time of the Borden murders, Edwin Porter was at least 3 years younger than Lizzie Borden. Porter is known to us as a crime reporter for the Fall River Daily Globe, and he covered the Borden case extensively. He was in the Borden house the day of the murders and talked to several of the key players. He was named as being one of the persons crowding the stairway in the jailhouse in Fall River the day that Lizzie was supposed to have told her sister Emma, "You have given me away." His book, The Fall River Tragedy, A History of the Borden Murders, privately published after Lizzie's acquittal in 1893 and sold by subscription for $1.50, holds the distinction of being the first book written on the case. Porter was only 30 years old. In addition, it is the first book that includes photographic evidence of the case. In the 1890s, newspapers only printed sketches of photographs, not the photographs themselves, So with Porter's book, it would be the first time that people would see the actual images of the case and photographs of the people in the story. The 1904 Fall River City Directory lists Edwin Porter as both a reporter for the Fall River Daily Globe and a correspondent for the Boston Herald. Sometime in 1900, Porter contracted tuberculosis. He made several sojourns to Rutland Sanitarium for Consumptives in Rutland, Massachusetts, and the treatments he received there appeared to do him good. But on February 28, 1904, Porter succumbed to his disease, dying in his home in Fall River. He was only 39 years of age. He was buried in St. Patrick's Cemetery in Fall River. He left a wife, aged 34, and 2 daughters, aged 12 and 5. The first to announce his passing was his own newspaper. A simple, sad announcement appeared on the front page. It read, "It is always a mournful duty to be obliged to record the passing away of one who has filled a position of usefulness in the life of the community, whose loss leaves a distinctive void in the sphere of activity which was the field of his labors, and who withal leaves behind him a record of duty faithfully performed. All the more keen is the pain and regret when he who has gone on to join the silent majority is one with whom we have been in intimate daily association as fellow workers and personal friends, mutually sharing in a great measure common tasks, as well as the worries and triumphs of the work engaged in. To all of us who have long stood in such congenial and fraternal relations on the globe, and with Edwin H. Porter, his taking off is a cause for profound sorrow. By his death, the globe is deprived of the valued service of an earnest, vigilant, and loyal member of the staff, while the local press brotherhood sustains the loss from its ranks of an esteemed, industrious, and most capable representative of the newspaper guild, who will be greatly missed and sincerely mourned." His obituary in the same paper, published further inside the issue, described Porter in glowing terms, such as a loyal, good-natured, and unselfish friend. They added, "The man has yet to be found in public life with whom he came in contact by virtue of his occupation, who can say that Porter ever betrayed a confidence or violated a pledge of silence imposed upon him." Prescience prevailed in their writing as well, describing Porter as the author of a very comprehensive and intelligent history of that celebrated double crime, which will be read with interest long after the author's passing. The rival newspapers were just as complimentary. The Daily Herald wrote that he was at all times courteous and obliging. The Fall River Daily Evening News stated that the news of his death, though long expected, was received with the deepest sorrow, for no man in his profession here was better loved or more highly respected. He was genial, courteous, and straightforward. Edwin H. Porter will be remembered as a typical Southern gentleman, and his death leaves a void in the ranks which will long be felt and hard to fill. Even the Boston newspapers noted his passing. The sad story of the Porter family does not end with Edwin's death. Daughter Winifred Alice succumbed to the same dreaded disease in 1919 at the age of 20 years old. She was buried atop her father in the same grave. Tracking down the remainder of the living Porters was quite a task. Thanks to the release of the 1950 census recently, I found that Mother Winifred Alice and the remaining daughter, Florence Porter, were both living as inmates at the Taunton State Hospital in Taunton, Massachusetts. After consulting with a historian at the Old Colony Museum in Taunton, I learned that during the era that the two women were inmates, there was indeed an almshouse of sorts on the grounds of the hospital, a hospital that is mainly known as a lunatic asylum. The city of Fall River paid their keep, as it was noted that the two were unable to work. But then what happened to them? With the assistance of the Taunton city clerk, I learned that Winifred died on December 25, 1952 at the Taunton State Hospital of cardiovascular disease, arteriosclerosis, and senility. She was 81 years old. The city of Fall River paid for her internment at St. John's Cemetery in Fall River, and she lies in an unmarked grave by herself. Thanks to Michael Martins of the Fall River Historical Society and the city of Fall River, I learned that the surviving daughter, Florence Porter, died unmarried on May 29, 1977, at the Crawford Nursing Home, of pulmonary tuberculosis, acute pulmonary edema, arteriosclerosis, and paranoid schizophrenia. The city of Fall River paid for her burial in St. Patrick's Cemetery, but in a different section than her father and sister. She lies in an unmarked grave alone. She was 84 years of age. When visiting Edwin Porter's grave at St. Patrick's Cemetery in Fall River, I expected perhaps a monument of some sort, but to add insult to injury, it is not so. There is no stone, plaque, or marker of any kind on his grave. The reason why is simple. The Porters were extremely poor following the early death of their breadwinner. When her husband died in 1904, wife Winifred purchased the grave for $11. It is what is termed a double single grave. 2 caskets can be interred in this plot, one on top of the other. I am sure Winifred thought that she would be the next to die, and that her daughters would probably get married and have families of their own, and when they died, they would be buried with their husbands. When daughter Winifred died in 1919, the grave was opened, and her casket was placed on top of her father's. No one had paid for the perpetual care of this grave, and without that, no marker could be placed on the site. Had Mrs. Porter paid for the perpetual care back in 1904, it probably would have cost her between $10 and $15. Throughout their years, mother and daughter lived together at the same address. The 1940 census shows them both unemployed and having no income, but somehow paying rent of $12 a month at 99 4th Street in Fall River. It is a barren place where the body of Edwin Porter lies, and nobody knows he's there. His great legacy is not noted by a stone, even though we continue to purchase his book, read his words, study his news reports, and debate his assertions of Lizzie's jailhouse remark. Something should be done about that, don't you think? Sherry Chapman, author of Lizzie Borden Resurrections, A History of the People Surrounding the Borden Case Before, During, and After the Trial, stumbled upon the sad fact that Porter had no marker on his grave while researching her book in 2014. She contacted St. Patrick's Cemetery and learned that if she would pay the amount that was in arrears, she would essentially own Porter's grave. They told her, whomever comes forward and pays the care would now become the owner of the grave and be in a position to mark it. The first step was to pay the perpetual fee, now known as the endowment fee. The cost of that was $320. That secured Sherry as the owner of the plot and the right to put a headstone on the grave. In May of this year, Sherry granted me the right to secure the funding for the stone to mark the grave of Edwin Porter. There was a $20 fee for a permit from the cemetery to put in the marker. There is an additional $365 foundation fee. This is for the monument setter to pour a cement foundation before he sets the marker in place. It is a cemetery rule, but without the foundation, grave markers tend to sink right into the ground, and grass grows right over it. The headstone will be a black granite slopestone, like the one pictured here. It will be engraved by laser and depict the open pages of a book to signify his career as an author and journalist. A dove will adorn the upper middle area above the book. Porter's inscription will occupy the left side and his daughter's the right. It will be noted that he is the author of the Fall River tragedy. We are using Rex Monumental Works in Fall River, a family-owned and operated company that has been in business, ironically, since 1892. The price of everything, perpetual care, Permit, foundation stone, and tax is $2,565. The fundraising site GoFundMe takes a very small cut of each transaction, but with small donations, this can add up. That is why we are setting our goal of $2,800. Any remaining monies will be donated to the Fall River Historical Society or used to purchase an urn for flowers. It is vital that we meet our goal. Here's how you can help. Go to GoFundMe and donate. Any amount you can give will be greatly appreciated. Each donation, however large or small, will help. Everyone who donates will receive a certificate stating that you are a part of funding the monument to Porter, and if you approve, your name will be added to the memorial page we are planning. We think it's time for Edwin H. Porter to be remembered in stone. Please do all you can to make it so. Thank you.